Can you imagine the exact moment when the life you spent 20 years building, layer by layer, sacrifice by sacrifice, collapses in front of you, triggered not by a shouted confession or a heated fight, but by the quiet act of reading a letter? Not a letter of love, not a letter of gratitude. A letter from your husband's mistress? I can, because that's exactly what happened to me. I used to believe betrayal was something distant, something that happened to other women, women in stories, in cautionary whispers at dinner parties, women who ignored warning signs, women who didn't really know their husbands. I thought I knew mine inside and out. I told myself I was different, that Daniel and I were different, but I was wrong. That day didn't just destroy my marriage. It destroyed the version of me who trusted him completely, who believed in us without question. And the worst part, I didn't just read that letter, I read it aloud. In front of him. In front of a room full of people who believed our marriage was uncheckable. The day I tore the mask from Daniel Sullivan's face, the man who had been my partner, my protector, my greatest deceiver, and it began in my kitchen. That morning started like any other. The pale winter light filtered through spotless kitchen windows, spilling across my gleaming marble counters. I took pride in my home. It was always immaculate. The scent of lemon polish still lingered from the night before. The kettle hummed softly as I set Daniel's breakfast tray, a perfectly boiled egg, a slice of toasted sourdough, his favorite blueberry preserves, and a pot of coffee, strong and black. My movements were second nature after 20 years, measuring without thinking, arranging without looking. That's when I saw it, an envelope. It lay on the counter as if it had always been there, but my gut tightened the moment I noticed it. There was no return address. My name, Elizabeth Sullivan, was written in elegant, almost old-fashioned script I didn't recognize. The paper was thick, luxurious, and there was a faint, sweet scent clinging to it. Perfume, not mine. I reached for it, and the moment my fingers brushed the paper, something inside me shifted. The clock on the wall ticked louder. The soft hum of the kettle became almost intrusive. My perfect kitchen suddenly felt cold, unfamiliar. I broke the seal and unfolded the page. The first line was enough to make my breath catch. Dear Mrs. Sullivan, you don't know me, but I've been in an intimate relationship with your husband for the past 11 months. The world went silent. My vision narrowed to the neat black ink on cream-colored paper. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the marble floor. The hot liquid spread across the counter, seeping into the cracks between the tiles like an ugly stain I couldn't stop. But I didn't clean it. I couldn't move. Her name was Claire. She wrote about weekends away in small coastal towns. The expensive jewelry Daniel bought her, paid for with our joint account. The apartment lease in her name. And the worst part, woven through the details, were her smug asides. How Daniel would laugh about my blind loyalty. How I was the perfect public wife, but not a woman who stirred passion. By the time I reached the end, my hands were trembling so hard the paper shook. The pain wasn't only about infidelity, it was about the humiliation, the knowledge that I had been a puppet in a cruel game orchestrated by the man I had trusted with every dream. I replayed moments I'd dismissed. The golden hair on his coat he'd claimed belonged to a nurse. The expensive pearl necklace he'd said was on order for my birthday, which never arrived. Now I knew it adorned Claire's neck. The sudden overnight shifts at the hospital. The way he discouraged my sister from visiting, saying he was too exhausted to host. It had all been there, hiding in plain sight. Each coincidence was now irrefutable evidence, each one a deeper knife to my soul. My mind was clouded by shock, unable to process the enormity of the betrayal. 20 years of love, of devotion, dissolved in an instant, revealed to be an elaborate fantasy, a gilded prison I had built with my own hands, brick by brick, now reduced to rubble by the cruel truth of a simple letter. The image of Daniel, so polished, eloquent, perfect in public, blurred before my eyes, replaced by that of a stranger, a manipulator. The humiliation coursed through my veins like poison, burning every cell, every memory. This wasn't just the pain of a wife betrayed. It was the anguish of a woman systematically stripped of her essence, her trust, her ambitions. Night fell over the mansion, heavy and silent, pressing down on me like the blanket of despair smothering my chest. I lay in bed, motionless, beside the man who now felt like a complete stranger. The soft, rhythmic breathing of Daniel, oblivious to the tempest he had unleashed, was once a sound that wrapped me in safety. Now it only churned my stomach. My eyes fixed on the dark ceiling, but I didn't see familiar shadows. I saw an abyss, a void without end. The letter from Claire, crumpled but perfectly legible in my mind, replayed itself over and over. Each word was an echo, each echo an amplification of my humiliation. Hours dragged by. The ticking clock didn't mark time. It marked the erosion of my old self, the submissive woman who had inhabited this bed for 2 decades. The fear that had paralyzed me for years, the fear of losing Daniel, of destroying the perfect life we had built, was a farce. There was nothing left to lose. I had already lost the most valuable thing, myself. Then, in the deepest stillness of the night, when darkness seemed to swallow everything, a cold, sharp clarity struck me. Like lightning in a storm, the truth burned into focus. The epiphany made no sound, left no visible mark, but its power was absolute. In the middle of the desolation, something stirred. A tiny spark of dignity, buried for years under neglect, began to burn. It wasn't fear anymore. It was a cold, controlled rage. A burning desire for justice, not just for me, but for the woman James had tried to erase. And with that spark came an iron determination. I turned my head toward him. He slept on, oblivious, his perfect facade intact for just a few hours more. In that moment, my decision crystallized. I could storm into his office, I could demand answers, but then a colder, sharper thought took root. I wouldn't just expose his betrayal, I would dismantle him. I would strip away every carefully constructed layer of his false image, but more importantly, I would reclaim my voice. The voice I had silenced for years. The identity I had surrendered to keep him pleased would return, stronger, clearer, and uncheckable. Daniel's entire life revolved around his image. Every patient, every colleague, every friend saw him as a man of impeccable integrity, a man of class and discipline. If I was going to take him down, it wouldn't be in private. It would be where he felt most untouchable, and fate had handed me the perfect stage. Our 20th wedding anniversary celebration had been planned for weeks. A grand evening at the Astoria Hotel ballroom, over 100 guests, including hospital board members, city officials, longtime friends. The perfect portrait of a lasting marriage. Perfect, indeed. The first light of dawn crept into the bedroom, brushing the walls with a pale glow that felt almost ironic, soft, gentle light bathing a place where trust had died. Daniel stirred beside me, stretching lazily as though nothing had happened, as though the world hadn't shifted forever. "Morning," he murmured, voice groggy but warm, the same voice that had whispered vows to me 2 decades earlier. I turned my head slowly to look at him. The familiarity of his face was now a cruel disguise, a mask hiding the rot beneath. I forced a smile, small, almost imperceptible. Inside, my mind was no longer clouded. It was sharp, calculating. This wasn't the time for confrontation. Not yet. If I have learned anything from 20 years of managing his image, it was the value of timing. For the next 5 days, I became an actress in my own life. I poured his coffee, laughed at his small talk, even let him take me to the jeweler to choose my anniversary gift. But while he worked late, I was preparing for war. I met with a discreet lawyer. I gathered bank statements, traced every purchase, every spa weekend, every boutique bill, every cash withdrawal lined up with Claire's timeline. And I made copies of her letter. Each went into a matching envelope. I hand-addressed them to his most respected peers, his mentor, his department chief, his closest friends, his sister, even the head of the medical board. They would find them under their dinner plates at the party. The night of the celebration arrived in a haze of champagne and candlelight. The ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers. The air was thick with perfume, polished silver, and the low hum of expensive laughter. I wore a floor-length sapphire gown, my hair swept into a sleek twist, diamond earrings catching the light. I looked radiant, poised, serene, exactly what everyone expected from the perfect wife. Guests arrived in waves, showering us with congratulations. Daniel was in his element, moving through the crowd with charm and confidence, one hand resting possessively on my waist. I smiled for the pictures. He looked so proud. He had no idea. Dinner was served, course after course of delicacies. Daniel charmed the crowd with toasts and anecdotes. I played my part, laughing when required. When dessert arrived, a towering cake, crowned with sugar rose, the master of ceremonies invited me to say a few words. I stood, the rustle of silk following me. The room fell quiet. 20 years, I began with a warm smile, is a long time. A fifth of a century building a life together, facing life's storms side by side. Daniel smiled from his chair, nodding in agreement, basking in my praise. But I continued, my voice sharpening. It's also enough time to discover that sometimes the person beside you is not the person you believe them to be. A ripple of unease passed through the room. I reached into my pocket and drew out an envelope, the original. I held it up, my eyes locked on Daniel. This, I said, my tone unwavering, is a letter I received 5 days ago. It was written by a woman named Claire, a woman my husband has been seeing for nearly a year. In it, she details her nearly year-long affair with my husband, your colleague, your friend, the man you've all come here to honor tonight. She describes not only the gifts he bought her with our money, the apartment he set up for her, but also the ways in which he mocked me, lied to me, and spent our shared resources to fund his deception. Gasps erupted. A few guests exchanged horrified glances. My voice didn't falter. Some of you might think this is a private matter, but my husband built his career, his reputation, on the image of integrity, an image I helped create and protect. You all deserve to know the truth, which is why there's a copy of this letter beneath your plate. The scraping of chairs and rustle of paper filled the ballroom. Faces turned from curiosity to shock. Daniel's voice broke through the noise. Elizabeth, I cut him off. No, you've told enough lies for both of us. Tonight, I speak for myself. He slumped in his chair, pale, his jaw tight as those who had once admired him now stared with cold, assessing eyes. I lifted my chin. This is my liberation. And Daniel, this is your unmasking. I walked out, the echo of my heels striking the marble floor in time with my heartbeat. Outside, the night was crisp and clean, the city lights sharp against the sky. For the first time in years, I felt light. I was no longer the woman I'd been 5 days ago. No longer the Elizabeth Daniel had shaped me into. I was simply Elizabeth Sullivan, and my story was mine again. If this story stirred your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a dose of love dopamine. I'll keep bringing you more tales of passion, heartbreak, and redemption crafted for the ones who still believe in love. And if you stayed until the very end, thank you. You're the kind of soul who believes in love, even when it hurts. Love harder, dream deeper, until the next heartbeat.